You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
Our next guest is here, Adam Grant. Adam is, as I said before, the single highest-rated professor at University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business and one of Business Week's favorite professors and one of the world's top 40 business professors under 40. And he has been fascinated by the idea of success, and that's what he talks about in his new book, Give and Take. Welcome to the show. Nice to have, well, we're just getting him on the air right now. He's going to talk, the title of his book, the whole title of the book is Give and Take, A Revolutionary Approach to Success. Do we have Adam on now? Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Nice to have you on this morning.
I'm thrilled to be here, Kathryn.
Okay, so you are Business Week's favorite professor. I'm impressed, and at Wharton. I have a son who just graduated from Wharton a couple of years ago.
Congratulations.
Yes, it's great. Okay, so we're talking about success, give and take, and yours is a revolutionary approach to success because you talk about how important it is, I guess, to have effective networking and collaboration and all of those kinds of things. And I always think of success, particularly maybe at Wharton, it's like dog eat dog, and you've just got to, you got to be on top all the time, and, you've got to be a taker. I mean, I'm exaggerating, I guess, but it kind of goes the opposite in terms of what your view of success is.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think when I first started reading the research on givers, takers, and matchers, I was really struck by the fact that a lot of people believe you have to be a taker, somebody who's trying to get as much as possible from other people, or at least a matcher, somebody who maintains an even balance of giving and getting in order to succeed. And lo and behold, it turns out that some of these people who I call givers, who actually enjoy helping others and contributing without strings attached, can actually achieve remarkable levels of success.
You're going to have to tell us how they do it, because as you're describing them, I think of like do-gooders. How successful? That's what comes to mind.
Oh, for me too. And I should say, excuse me, right off the bat, that there are a lot of givers who end up with just terrible results. When I looked at the data, when you look at engineers, when you look at people in medicine, when you look at salespeople, the lowest productivity, the worst performance quality, the lowest grades in medical school, and the worst revenue in sales typically belongs to the givers, who end up, putting other people first so much that they either burn out or get exploited by takers. But if you look at the other end of the spectrum, and you look at the people in engineering with the highest productivity and performance quality, you look at the medical students with the highest grades and the salespeople with the greatest annual revenue, they are also the givers. The takers and the matchers end up somewhere in between. And so there is this group of people who manages to help others and actually achieve their own success as well.
Well, you describe them in your book as smart givers. So and I assume the ones who are successful are the smart givers, and the other ones are not so smart givers at the other end. So what is a smart giver?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with self-sacrifice. There are a lot of givers who are purely selfless, and they put other people so far ahead of themselves that they end up running out of time and energy and resources to be able to get their own work done. And what the successful givers tend to do is put other people first frequently, but also keep their own interests in the rearview mirror and try to figure out, okay, can I add value to others' lives without a dramatic cost to me? Or even, can I contribute to others in ways that might also benefit me?
Would that example of that be a Bill Gates?
Yeah, I think he's a great example. I think that we've certainly seen a big spike in his giving behavior over the past few years.
Let's take the examples, maybe doesn't have to be a Bill Gates, but just in general, an example of how that works out. Let's say for a physician and then for an engineer, and be, specific in terms of the different professions, a smart giver.
Yeah, I think if you look at the smart givers, one of the things, let's take this into the context of engineering. Frank Flynn at Stanford did this study where he actually got engineers to rate each other on how many favors they did and how many favors they received. And, just like I mentioned earlier, you had the engineers at the bottom in productivity and performance quality being those who did more favors than they got, and also the engineers at the very top who did that. And I think one of the mistakes that the engineers at the bottom made was they were so far out of balance that they literally ran out of time to finish their own work and to do it carefully. But the really successful engineers were able to say, okay, look, I'm going to really divide up my time such that I've got particular hours dedicated toward helping others, and I also have windows of time that are really focused on me getting my own work done. this actually connects really nicely to some research by Leslie Perlow at Harvard, who actually worked with a group of engineers in a Fortune 500 tech company and had them create what she called a quiet time window, where Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., there was actually no interruption. And that was the time for engineers to make progress on their own individual projects. And then in the afternoons, those days, and the rest of the week, there was lots of exchanging of help. And those boundaries seemed to be very effective. About two-thirds of engineers showed above average productivity. And the division actually launched its product for only the second time in company history on time.
Good story. How do you think that happens? What do you think that does to the person who is the smart giver as you've described them? Is there some inherent thing that you begin to feel good about yourself? It changes your attitude? You become more productive? Or how does that work?
I think definitely one of the things that can happen when you become an intelligent giver is you end up experiencing greater meaning in your work. You feel like your actions are adding value to other people's lives, that what you do matters and is really appreciated. And that can motivate you to work harder and contribute more. There's certainly a lot of evidence behind that. I think the other part of this story, though, is the way that giving actually changes your relationships. So givers tend, in my experience, to build deeper and broader networks than matchers and takers do. You know, the takers get a lot of breadth because, you know, after they take advantage of someone, they have to add a new person to their network, so they have people to exploit who haven't figured out their reputations yet. And, you know, obviously they burn a lot of bridges along the way. And then, you know, the matchers tend to narrow themselves in the sense that they will typically only help people who they think they can get help from, whereas givers tend to reach out and contribute to a broader range of people. And then, you know, the act of actually contributing tends to strengthen a relationship and create a more meaningful connection. And I think that at the end of the day, it's often true that what goes around comes around, and these givers actually see their help come back around to benefit them.
How does that work on Wall Street? Because I know a lot of you guys, at least your students, end up on Wall Street.
Yeah, I think that Wall Street sometimes has a bad rap when it comes to the dynamics of giving and taking. I have been pleasantly surprised by at least some firms on Wall Street where there are a lot of people who are drawn to work in the financial services industry because they're really interested in creating value for other people. And I think that one of the clearest ways you can see this is in knowledge sharing, where this is research by Boris Groysberg. What Boris shows is if you were, let's say, a star security analyst and you moved to another firm, your probability of becoming and staying a star drops dramatically, and it takes about 5 years to recover. And the reason for that is that it's hard to take your knowledge with you, in the sense that, you know, no individual has all the information he or she needs to make good forecasts and stock predictions. And the star security analysts who actually moved to another firm with their teams were able to maintain their star status. And I think a lot of that was because if you end up in a strong team in any kind of organization, but especially in knowledge work, you actually are able to develop a really effective pattern of exchanging information in ways that benefit the whole group.
Well, you know, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking, are you a pariah at Wharton? Or, I mean, I know I've read some of the testimonials. Actually, he was on the show, Daniel Pink, sings your praises. But what's been the response of the faculty at school and of the students, too?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. I was introduced a few weeks ago at a conference as the guy who studies altruism in the Temple of Greed. And I thought that was unfair on both counts.
That's exactly what I was thinking, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think those stereotypes are out there. But, yeah, I've been really impressed and inspired by the strong focus on social impact at Wharton. And, you know, also the fact that there are many, many students who come to us and faculty on our ranks who are really passionate about helping others along with pursuing their own individual success. And so, yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised by the number of students and faculty who have responded to these ideas by saying, yeah, you know, this is how I try to live my life.
Do you find that, I don't know, how long have you been there at Wharton?
4 years.
4 years. So have you seen a difference over, say, these past 4 years in the students themselves when and I know usually the MBA students are older, they've been out in the real world as well as having graduated from college. So do you see a difference in their, we're going to use the word altruism or intelligent giving, having that as a goal, you know, more so than, say, when you first started teaching?
I think so. I came to Wharton right after the financial crisis. And I think we started to see a little bit of a shift in the student body in that, many people were coming back to school trying to figure out how can I create value as opposed to extracting it. And, what can I do that might make a difference in the lives of others or in my community or even more broadly in society. And, I think that passion has grown from what I've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, don't you think, the question is, how can I make a lot of money and also make a difference and be a good person? At least I see that perhaps maybe because some of these, the Bill Gates or even Bill Clinton or now Michael Bloomberg has given, $500 million to Johns Hopkins, and with the advent of the internet, it's all right out there. We can see how that's possible to do.
Yeah, I think it's something that more and more people are aspiring to, and it was one of the reasons that I wrote Give and Take, actually. Bill Gates, if we go back to his example, at the World Economic Forum in 2008, said there are two great forces of human nature, self-interest and caring for others. And it's really the hybrid engine of these two forces that drives a successful economy. And I think there's so many people who believe that, I think incorrectly, that it's either or, that you can either be self-interested or you can care for others. And I think that we need to really put those two together.
Yeah. And what I guess in your book absolutely is helping us to understand that, how to do that. What about your story, though? I mean, how did you get to this point? First of all, getting to Wharton, and second of all, writing the book.
Well, I felt really lucky to benefit from some extraordinary mentors who really role modeled all of the giving principles that I've been studying. One is a psychologist, Brian Little. Another is a management professor, Jane Dutton. And Brian and Jane, along with many other mentors, gave me just incredible amounts of time and helped me understand the deep-seated flaws in many of the ideas that I was trying to study and, really improve my research in fairly dramatic ways. And both also passionate teachers and really inspired me to try to pay those gifts forward. And, I guess the other thing that really sort of shaped my thinking about this book was my family. My grandparents on both sides have been extremely generous people. And both my mom and my dad also have really spent a lot of time going out of their way to help others. And I think I spent a lot of time growing up wondering, well, why don't more people do this?
So I have to ask you, what did your mother or father do outside the home?
So my mom was a teacher. My dad's a lawyer, and it's really interesting that they did plenty of helping on the job, but to see the giving they did outside. My dad volunteering time to coach soccer and baseball, and then teach swimming and flying, and then my mom really being one of those people who just loves picking out presents for others and trying to figure out if she can brighten somebody else's day or solve their problems.
Well, then you had a great example, not just academically, but you've had this great example within your family also, right? Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
What's she doing?
So Tracy actually works at MRM, and she works in digital content and has also been really enjoying trying to figure out how to manage these principles in her own life.
You have a PhD in organizational psychology?
I do.
Yeah. How does that fit into the picture? I remember I had to take, I have an MSW, but I have a degree in psychology, and I remember taking maybe one course in organizational psychology. So how did that PhD get you to where, in organizational psychology, get you to where you are today in writing this book, Give and Take?
Well, I think that there's a lot of great insight in psychology that sits around collecting dust in journals. And, there are some academics who read it, but it doesn't always see the light of day. And one of the things that really drew me to organizational psychology was the idea that many, many people spend the majority of their waking hours at work. And that, if we could develop a deeper and richer understanding of how to, improve the quality of life at work, then, we could really put psychology into action. And so for me, it was a great opportunity to take the very best ideas and theories and experiments in psychology and really try to sort of import them over to the workplace.
Which you've done. And then I'm sort of bringing it back a little. Then you have a BA from Harvard.
Yeah, when I was a Harvard undergrad, actually, I got a little taste of being a doormat.
Yeah. Really? Okay, so how did that go? What do you mean being a doormat?
Well, I was working at the Let's Go travel guides, sort of like a Lonely Planet or a Frommer's or Fodor's, and I was working in advertising sales, and I had never left the United States except for going to Canada, and so I was trying to work with French hotel operators and airline companies in Australia and Thailand, and I was also very shy and introverted. And I really wanted to help these clients advertise their services in the Let's Go books. And, they would ask me for discounts, and I felt really bad, and so I just offered them, going right against the rules in my contract. And, it was one of those experiences where over time I learned that I was actually hurting the company while I was helping my clients. And I met an assistant manager at Let's Go whose job was actually funded by the advertising revenue that my group was supposed to be bringing in. And that was sort of an eye-opening experience. And I realized, I might be a little bit of a pushover, when I'm trying to help clients. But now I know there are people out there who I'm supposed to be supporting, and I can be a little bit tougher and more tenacious because I'm going to be advocating for those people.
Yeah, you got a little more sophisticated in your giving, right?
A little bit, yeah. I had to balance helping my clients with protecting my company's interests.
But that's good because you went through that experience. I mean, all of that contributes to obviously where you are today. Well, now just jumping forward a little bit. So your colleagues, how do they feel about your book and your colleagues at Penn? Or the response, I would say.
I think there's a range of reactions. I think there are people who are very excited about the message. There are people who probably are a little bit more skeptical. And I think one of the things that I really love about academia is the opportunity to actually create a set of common standards, and then say, okay, let's actually see if we can gather the most compelling data and the best evidence to figure out which of these perspectives is most accurate. And, I think the other thing that's really interesting is just to see how many people are excited about building a bridge, from theory to practice, or as Tal Ben-Shahar likes to say, between the ivory tower and Main Street. And, I think that one of the things that really drew me to an applied field was to say, I want to take social science and make it useful. All
right. So in talking about make social science and making it useful, let's talk about politics. How can good guys finish first in politics?
It's a great question. I'm waiting for a study to be done that gets to the bottom of that in politics. What I will say is that I think there are a lot of takers who have become very good fakers, and fooled us into thinking that they're pretty generous people, and maybe even gotten elected as a result. And I would like to see us do much more careful sincerity screening to figure out, okay, who are the people who are really going to put their community or their country's interests at the forefront of their decision making and their policy planning. And, I think that would be a pretty good starting point to try to screen out the takers.
I think you're the man to do it. You really, seriously, you would be the person to do that. Once you can figure that out, you'll have everybody's vote. Because, I mean, I keep thinking about all these guys on Capitol Hill, and do they have our best interests, Republicans and Democrats, or is it just, they're the ones who are doing it? It seems to me they're taking and really not giving back. But that's my personal read.
Yeah, I think that does happen. And, I think a lot of people are drawn into politics, with a giving mentality, right, of wanting to make a country or a community better. And, I think that then, you encounter one too many takers, and you feel like you have to scale back and protect yourself, otherwise you're going to be a victim. And, I think that sometimes that makes it really difficult for people to stay in a giving mindset. So
how does it happen? And in your opinion, how does that happen, and how can you prevent that?
Well, I think that, a lot of it happens when people are too quick to trust. I think that one of the mistakes that many givers make is to assume that everybody else is a giver, which in some ways is a strength, right? Looking for the potential in others, seeing the best in others often brings out that potential and motivates them to rise to the occasion. But sometimes that gets pushed really too far, and we end up trusting people who turn out not to have our best interests at heart. And, I think there's actually some really good news on this, which is there's evidence, there are a couple different studies showing this, that givers are actually better judges of character than takers and matchers. Because givers tend to take more risks on other people, given that, they often do see the best in them. And so they get exposed to the full range of behavior that other people are capable of, from the most self-serving to the most generous. Whereas the takers tend to be more cautious, and they don't get to see that wide spectrum of behavior. So I think what we need givers to do is actually put these skills into action, and instead of just trusting all of the people all of the time, maybe trust most of the people most of the time.
Or some of the people all of the time, and Abraham Lincoln, right? That's one of my favorite quotes. Well, that's your next book.
It very well could be.
It should be your next book. All right, we only have a couple minutes left, so what do we want to leave our listeners with besides your book, Give and Take, A Revolutionary Approach to Success, and good guys can finish first. And I think you've really pointed out how good guys can finish first in lots of different arenas, engineering, politics. It is possible. You're one of them.
Well, thank you. I will try to live up to that.
Yeah, you are doing it. Okay, Adam Grant, thanks so much for being on the show this morning. Give and Take, that's his new book.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you. We're going to take a short break right now, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Psst, hey, over here, behind the fence.
Huh? You? The bike?
Yeah, the bike. Here in the grass where the kids left me a while ago. Could you get the dust off my seat and remind the kids how fun I still am?
Okay. Oh, you are dusty.
I may need my spokes tightened too. Let's go.
As Native American parents and caregivers, our encouragement to healthy lifestyles for our kids is helping them get outside and play. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov/Indian Country. Brought to you by USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Hi, Cici here for RAT, recording artists, actors, and athletes against drunk driving. Over 300 people in this country are killed every week by a drunk driver. That's the equivalent of 2 plane crashes every week. And the problem isn't going away unless we all do our part to stop it. So please, plan ahead and designate a driver. Friends, don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Is that a faucet running? That's not a faucet. That's a river rushing through the forest. Forest rivers provide over 100 million people with clean water to drink.
What? I can't hear you because of the vacuum.
That's not a vacuum. That's the trees in the forest cleaning up the air we breathe.
I didn't know the trees were so amazing.
Yep, and the forest gives us shade, trees to climb.
That's awesome. Let's go explore some more.
Visit the forest today and enjoy all it does, just for you. To learn more about the forest and find one near you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
We're back. I'm Kathryn Zox, your social worker with the microphone. You're listening to the Social Workers Radio talk show at the University at Albany, 90.9 FM. And I'm here with Andrew White on the board. Andrew, our last guest was like really not only brilliant, but this is like a whole, to me, it's a new concept. I mean, good guys finish first.
Yeah. I don't know if I believe it, but I'll take his word for it.
Yeah, well, you have to test it out, try it out. One thing I forgot to mention was that he has been, amongst other things, he designed several experiential learning activities based on The Apprentice, in which, and listen to this, students have raised over $175,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation while developing leadership, influence, networking, and collaboration skills.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, it is, collaboration skills. He's he's won all kinds of awards for teaching. Every class that he teaches in, he gets the Best Teacher Award. He's sort of like another game changer. I always call them game changers.
Huh.
Doesn't he? He sounds like that to me. Yeah. But why don't you believe it, the good guys? Give me an example.
I don't know. I like to think of myself as a good guy. I'm totally walked over.
I think you are. Yeah.
Most of my days consist of being walked over. Because I'm a good guy.
But he said that, well...
See, that's the problem. I'm one of those, like...
At the other end, you're too good a guy, because he said good guys are at the bottom and at the top. So you're not an intelligent giver.
No.
There's a flaw in your giving. Mm-hmm. What is it?
I don't know.
Give me an example. Well, give me an example of like you gave and got nothing back, or whatever it caused you to be not successful at what you were doing. Can you... Oh. Or is it just a feeling?
It's just a feeling. I could be totally misreading my entire life.
You're a little young to do that. You have a few more years to keep on going.
Yeah, but normally I feel like I try to give as much as I can. I'm
more of an intelligent giver as I've gotten older because I've had more experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that when I was younger, probably was I was going to say a giver, maybe not as intelligent a giver as I am now.
Yeah. I'm definitely not an intelligent giver. I did the sales thing like he does, or he did.
Yeah.
It was like his first thing out of college. That's what I'm doing. And I'm totally in the same boat that he was in.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're just giving it away?
I think so.
Well, did you learn anything from him? I hope so.
Yeah.
When you go to work today, you'll be a little... You'll analyze it, whatever you're doing, whatever you're selling or
Possibly.
Yeah, you have to learn from it. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, but then he learned from that, and that's where he got where he is today, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe I'll learn from it. I don't know.
Intelligent giving.
Intelligent giving.
But one thing he said, which I hadn't thought about, was that givers actually end up expanding their world that they can operate in business, whereas takers don't, because once they take from somebody and they I don't necessarily think they have to screw them over, I don't know, then the person doesn't want to do business with them anymore, so they have to keep going out and finding new and new clients, new and new venues, and take from them. Whereas givers will have people come back to them if it's a win-win situation for both of you.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Every taker I know has a network of takers, and they all sort of
take from each other.
Yeah, and they're all cronies, and they just when one of them finds a person to take from, they all sort of pile on, and they have like a network of people who take things, and they all like each other.
Would you say, are these students?
I don't know. These are
people you associate with.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. See, I feel like either I don't have enough experience, because who am I?
You're young.
Yeah.
But if I were taken advantage, when I'm taken advantage of, and then I realize it, I don't want to go back and do business with that person again.
Yeah.
I won't. And now this is another thing, there are a lot more options today. If 20 years ago, 25 years ago, particularly maybe in a smaller town, although Albany's a medium-sized town, maybe there were just 2 or 3, I'll say, cleaners. And if you got taken to the cleaners, you still had to go back to the same people because you didn't have that many options. Today you have options, not just brick and mortar options to get services, but you can get services on the net, so that if I feel taken advantage of, I don't have to go back to that person. I don't have to go back to a taker, and I think that's another piece of it.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I won't, and I used to. And I don't.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But of course, a lot of that has to do with being able to do business on the net, I think.
You're asking the wrong person. I'm totally exploited, and I don't know anything about the world. And
you
good
know
luck.
a lot about the world.
I know nothing about the world.
Yes, you do.
Nope.
Totally exploited, but you can't be. You have to allow people to exploit you. I think that's what he was saying. Or that was part of what he was saying.
See, I feel like that's got to be the main difference. For the people at the bottom, they're exploited to the point where they can't do anything anymore. The people who are the givers up at top are giving something. There seems to be almost a qualitative difference there. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. I haven't read the book, You
should read the book.
I might.
Give and take. I don't know if you can get it online. Do you read your books online? I mean, do you read your books? You read paper?
Yeah, I have to read paper. I can't do the
electronic books.
It hurts my eyes.
It does? Mm-hmm. Even the Kindle? Because the Kindle's supposed to not hurt your eyes as much as what I have here is the iPad mini.
I can't do it.
I do both.
And that night, I actually like books, and the problem is I have too many of them, and they just sort of build up all over my apartment.
You'll have to get rid of some after a while. Be a giver. Give it to somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to read the books.
Yeah. I try. I also like the library. I'm a big fan of the library.
Are you?
Because I don't have to keep the book, which is the nice part,
I haven't been to the library in 20 years.
I love them. I think they're like the best organizations.
Well, now libraries are actually, I think they're getting a new definition, because not that they weren't this before, but now they are social areas for where people can gather, and whether it's having lectures or lectures is one thing, or talking to people, not just going and buying not buying a book, but taking out a book on loan. So there are lots of opportunities at libraries now, free.
Yeah, I know the Albany Public Library does things just about every day. There's shows, there's speakers, there's anything you can imagine, programs.
And for all age groups.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's a place for seniors to gather. I know young families, mothers, and I know in the community I live in right outside of Albany, the library is like constantly having activities and stuff going on all the time, and for free.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many of them, and especially in Albany, there's so many libraries. It's great.
That's because we're in New York.
Yeah.
And we're a very erudite intellectual community. Yeah. What about the library here at SUNY Albany, at the University of Albany?
Well, I think it's sort of a different thing altogether. You know,
when I was in school and I couldn't go to the library because if I went to the library to study, I always fell asleep. It was conducive to sleeping for some reason. You'd go up in the stacks and buy and get the books and start writing or whatever I was doing or reading, and then I'd be out cold. So I really had to be in a place that was a little more active.
I loved them. You sit there and drink coffee. That's what got me through it.
And you did it.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
You have your degree.
Amazingly, I still do, and I haven't turned it into like a cutout snowflake or a hen turkey yet.
You think you'll go to graduate school?
I would like to, but anything I would want to go to graduate school for is something that's not really usable outside of, say, teaching. Like if I went back to school, I'd want to do it for like political theory or philosophy. That was my major and minor, the subjects I really loved. Unfortunately, you really can't do too much with those out in the real world.
Philosophy, you have to teach philosophy.
Yeah. And political theory is essentially just philosophy.
What is political theory? I took philosophy, but what is political theory? You mean?
Political theory is, like Locke and all those people, even the early philosophers, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, all of that falls into political theory. There isn't really too much of a difference. I think one of the big differences is, and I hope none of my political theory professors are listening because they're going to...
Go ahead.
It seems like obviously there's more of a focus on politics, but it seems like it's philosophy applied. How can we make people be political? And this doesn't necessarily mean into that world of politics, so to say. There's sort of a different level of it. What can we do to make people, or how do people get involved with each other and interact in ways that are political to
accomplish certain goals within the community? Is that what you're talking about? Be politicized. It doesn't mean that you have to be a senator or the president of the United States, but a political group within a community, call to action when you need things to get done. I
don't even think this means like within an organized formal structure. How do we just get people to help each other?
Thinking about it.
That's a political thing you're doing for other people. And that's sort of what was examined. And I thought that was just fantastic. And I didn't actually have to think about, like, government at all, which was great. Because I don't know how I feel about all of that. So it was very interesting when I took it.
Well, I think it's important. I think it's important for all of us to think that way, to have the opportunity. So I think you should get your PhD, and I think you should be teaching this to the next generation of students, college students or high school students.
But then the other problem is, if I got my degree in this, like humanities and liberal arts things are sort of being defunded throughout the country.
Well, it will come back again, and it's going to take people like you and students like you to do that. You don't want it to go away. You don't want us to be I don't want us to be, or I can't see it as a good thing for us to be a country of just scientists and engineers. It's the balance that makes it interesting. Art and music and science and philosophy. I was just talking about this the other day with my boyfriend. Like I had, when I majored. Well,
we've got a couple minutes left.
Okay, when I majored, I was a psychology major, but it was in arts and sciences at Boston University, and they were very strict about courses that you had to take in your major, in the courses that were related to your major, and then it was a liberal arts education, so you had to take at least a course in science and music and art and all of those things. And I used to think, well, what am I going to do with all this, this information like you're talking about? But it gave me a basis, a substance, a way of an introduction to a way of looking at the world, which is you're talking about, I think, in terms of political science. It gave me something, not just a narrow focus. Yeah, but that liberal education and college have only been popular and popular for the past how many years? People didn't start. College wasn't something you necessarily did up until 50s, 60s is when those things became like a sort of a standard, right? Well, less people went to college, but the ones who did go to college, liberal arts was something that they tended to major in. I think actually things became more specific more recently. There are more let's say engineering and technology and all those kinds of things. That's more recent. But now we have lots of people doing like English degrees, and we have a giant population of people with English degrees, and is there necessarily a place for all of these people? We'll put them in a little community together and they can sit and talk. I have to think about that one. Well, Andrew and I have to say goodbye. You've been listening to the Social Workers Radio talk show. We're going to start another show, and it's just going to be us talking. Just us talking.